Hi, you've reached the Signal Watch. Film, comics, television, sci-fi, superheroes, noir, history, and more. Join us as we examine cultural artifacts of the 20th century, boldly explore the 21st, and try to put it all in perspective. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Steens. Stay tuned. We're gonna try to make this work. Hi, I'm Ryan Steens. I'm your host, and with me today is Amy Cavender.
Hi, everybody.
Amy and I have known each other for quite some time, and she has slogged through the first two 50 Shades movies. I have not read the book. Amy, have you read any of the books?
I tried to read the books, or the first book, and I gave up, but I have gotten a lot of exposure to the content of the books because there was some brave soul a few years ago who was using the Stephen Hawking voice synthesizer to read selected excerpts from the book. And, of course, I listened to those with great close attention, and I got to know a little bit about the books as they were written in that way.
So, Amy, part of why I wanted to have you join me for seeing 50 Shades Darker was that you actually have a bit of an educational and professional background that I thought could shed some light on the material.
Yes. For a long time, I was actually a human sexuality educator for a family planning clinic system based in Central Texas. And that gave me the opportunity to learn a lot around sex and relationships. So that may have been part of your thought process. And I also have a master's degree in counseling from Texas State. And obviously part of the coursework in that is talking about human relationships and communication and, how to show love and get love in your life and all that kind of fun stuff. So there were a lot of things we have a lot to discuss after reviewing the first film.
So, it's been 2 years since I do want to back up and say, yeah, we just finished watching the first film. There's a lot has actually changed in the news, in culture, in the past few years since that movie came out. We've borne witness to the Me Too movement. A lot of things have come to light, a lot of things about consent. And this movie is entirely about those issues, but from a 2014, 2015 sort of perspective.
Right. And it is, even back then, a lot of people recognized it as problematic. There were a lot of issues around consent. There were a lot of issues around how their relationship unfolded and boundaries and him having respect for her autonomy, his lack of respect for her autonomy. So it's only more glaring now.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly a little bit hard to watch. It was hard to watch for a lot of other reasons. It's easy to watch the movie and kind of snicker at the lurid content, and absolutely do that because it's a little goofy in times. I'm not sure it's the most erotic movie, even though that's the way it's sold. I'm not sure anyone in it is attracted to each other. There's nothing particularly sexy about it. But it has this massive audience. It's like the first, maybe the whole trilogy are like some of the best-selling books that have ever been out. The movie the first one cost about $40 million, brought in hundreds of millions. So there's obviously this huge audience for this that also followed it into the sequel. They didn't just show up opening weekend. And on top of all of that, it's Twilight fan fiction that was rewritten and changed up a little bit. And so that impacts a little bit of the story. And Twilight had its own issues.
Yes, very much so. And it's so interesting because you'll have people defending it and saying, oh, well, he just cares for her so much, he does all these things to keep her safe, which is, something that people could say about the characters in both Twilight and in 50 Shades. But it's like, well, you could say that, or you could say that he trusts her so little to make good choices and to survive any further into adulthood than she's already made it, that he has to always intervene in this intrusive, patronizing way. So,
yeah, I mean, unlike Edward, who was, I believe, I watched those movies. I figured out 3.25 of them, but honestly, under the influence of a lot of red wine when I watched them, and so I don't remember them terribly well. But he was about 100 years old. Meanwhile, we have these two fantasy characters here in this one where Anastasia is kind of the prototypical Mary Sue sort of character, where you can't quite figure out why everyone is supposedly throwing themselves at her. She is apparently an English major who is graduating and is a little bit sheepish, and those are pretty much her defining qualities as she comes into the movie. I mean, there's definitely some like, oh, you can see how she pushes back against Christian, and that's why she's sexy. But at least Christian is 27, I think. I think they stated that, and but Edward was like 100, so it made going after a high schooler all the creepier. But there's maybe a little bit less of an age difference here.
Yeah. Well, as I said before, I feel like they missed a real opportunity in this film by not having Christian Grey to be a little bit sparkly. I feel like that should have probably happened.
Yeah, Christian's an interesting lack of character. He's clearly lifted from Edward, and clearly some bits lifted straight from Bruce Wayne. He's a billionaire who supposedly was a self-made billionaire, but then they show his family and they're living in a castle somewhere outside of Seattle. But he's an orphan. At the same time, he has this large family. He knows how to fly a helicopter. He's a concert-level pianist. He's and I'm using air quotes here, businessman. And they say he's in telecommunications, but then agri work in Africa, and it's not. I mean, he doesn't need to have any more than Wayne Tech needs to be explained in the Batman comics. But he's just kind of rich. That's just kind of the big appeal, and that in itself sets up a whole slew of power differentials and things he's able to accomplish and ways he's able to manipulate Anastasia, who is graduating probably in debt from college.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I like improbable millionaire or billionaire protagonists as much as the next person. Not only Bruce Wayne, but Tony Stark, even Mason Lang. All these people that have this mad amount of money and they do all these little odds and ends. But I don't understand how someone with those resources and that reach and that ability would become fascinated by a girl that works in a hardware store.
Yeah, I mean, no digging on the actress. She's fine. I can't remember her name at this moment at all. Dakota Johnson. Dakota Johnson. You actually said just before we started recording, she's a good actress with a crummy part. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure what to make of. And you'd also mentioned you'd seen the actor who plays Christian Grey in other things, and he was okay. Yes,
he's his part is written terribly, so very terribly that he cannot salvage it. And
he's 50 Shades of fucked up.
Yes. Well, and also he fucks hard, and I think that's really important for you.
Right, yeah.
It's just like all the lines that he's supposed to deliver with some kind of gravelly sex appeal just come out like a try-hard. Yeah. It just doesn't sound convincing at all when he's saying all these things that, if they can even be said by a human, which I'm not sure really could happen in anything approximating our reality. But if someone were to say those things, then they would need to be said in a different way than he was able to deliver.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a rough road as far as those things are concerned. There are all sorts of things that I found interesting, even in the very beginning when he's just the way that it's written, and it made me actually wonder. It starts right off from lifting. He states to Anastasia when they have this meet cute interview section at the beginning that it's funny, the harder he works, the more luck he seems to have, which is a quote you can actually attribute to Thomas Jefferson, but he does not cite Thomas Jefferson. And I always thought that was a funny quote for Thomas Jefferson, a slaveholder, to have thrown out there as often as he did, or as it gets attributed to him as, yeah, he worked super hard. It's like he was kind of sitting back at Monticello sipping tea while other people were doing all the heavy lifting.
Yep.
Not to get too SJW on you.
And that was the appropriate amount.
And then he immediately sends her, these expensive books right after they've had their meet cute, because he found out that she was a literature major. And I was never clear, too, whether they were graduating from a master's program or an undergraduate program, because she's very concerned about her thesis, which you never see her working on during the course of the movie. But she graduates. They all graduate with honors because they're all Mary Sue's and perfect. I'm trying to think of what else we should be discussing as we're heading down this path. But there's kind of the question, I'll go ahead and throw it out there, of he has lots of money, and it kind of creates a hard time fighting the notion that you can kind of get away with whatever you want to, or you're more appealing. The movie sets up his wealth as an aphrodisiac, I guess is the way I'd put it. And I didn't know how you saw that, or if that's how you saw it, but she certainly lets a lot of things slide and gets pretty giddy over his number of cars, his penthouse apartments, these sorts of things.
Yeah, that was really kind of a perplexing thing, because she would put up all this token resistance about, like, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that. Oh, you have an Audi. Oh, this is a helicopter. And it's just, it was really troubling in a way, because either she was into it or she wasn't. Mm-hmm. And if she wasn't into it, then why was she still there? Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, looking at this kind of through a larger perspective, everything that he has, not only does he have it, it also has the meaning of, I have all of these resources, and what I want is what I get, and I want you. And it makes it perhaps have this kind of undercurrent of danger almost to decline his attentions and decline his advances, because, this dude broke into her apartment.
Right.
This dude took her car and sold it, which should not be legal. And I don't think it actually is, because I think you have to sign the title.
I don't know. So that means they broke into her house and also got the title, right?
And that's scary. It's not cute, and it's not impetuous. It's frightening, because if you can do that, what else can you do? That's like garden variety, day-to-day life for him. Apparently, he did not have, any pause. He didn't have any reluctance. He's just like, well, you need a better car. Doop, doop, doop. Well, I wanted to be in your house, so here I am. Yeah. And there's a lot of implicit threat in that.
Right. I mean, we don't even know. Sorry, the dogs are in the room, and so you'll occasionally hear their collars shaking. Yeah, I mean, we don't know if she has the title to this new car. All we know is she has the keys. Right. We can assume the insurance and whatnot is in her name, but yeah, absolutely. And you pointed out he didn't get her a better phone, which
right,
the biggest crime of all.
How does she still have a flip phone in 2014? I mean, it seems like that's almost like some kind of weird hipster statement at this point, to have a flip phone.
It's my bespoke flip phone. One of the things that struck me watching it this time, one of our friends, Paul, had asked on Twitter when we mentioned we were watching this, if what the narrative arc was of the three movies. Where was it headed? Did it have some like Luke from farm boy to Jedi Master having sending his father off, it made me think about it, because originally I said there is no arc at all. If the first two movies are any indication, it's very episodic. It's written as fan fiction that was aping someone else's fiction that wasn't particularly well edited or thought out. If the movies are any indication, it's at least not a tight narrative economy. But I'm going to throw this out there, that if the first movie and the second movie and what I read of the Wikipedia entry of the third novel are any indication, the arc is Anastasia makes his sex life more boring over time.
That is also that is a fair summary of what I have absorbed as well, which is kind of, I don't know. It's a little sad to me that that's the arc, because I know a lot of people that are into kink that are loving and honest and honorable and very consent oriented, and they would not conduct themselves in this way on either side, either the top or dom or the bottom or sub or whatever. There was a lot of talk in that community when the books came out. They were like, oh my God, people are going to think this is what we do. And basically a lot of her internal narrative is like, oh, he's such a pervert. Oh, this is so terrible. But yet at the same time, there's also this parallel track of like, oh, I'm so attracted to him. Oh, I could fix him. I could make him where he doesn't want to hurt people anymore. It's like, he doesn't want to hurt people exactly. It's not like he's running around slashing throats and taking people's pinky fingers or something.
Which might have made the movie slightly more interesting.
Right, exactly.
Different movie. But
yeah, very different movie, but still, he is, a sexual sadist, and he likes to cause pain within a sexual context that does not appear to cause lasting harm, but yet it's just a bridge too far for our delicate flower Anastasia.
And at that, I think I counted, we saw the Red Room 3 times.
Yes,
there was an initial time, well, maybe 4 if you include when they walk in the room and they do kind of the luxury shot of all of the equipment that he has before he pitches out the contract, which I'll loop back to momentarily. Mm-hmm. And then they have sex twice in the room in fairly brief scenes, because there are other scenes that just go on and on and on that are not in the room, where you're looking at your watch and can I take the dogs out while this is going on? And then there's the final scene, which I do want to loop back to, which a huge chunk of the plot of this movie is the idea that he's such a meticulous businessman that he's going to have her sign a contract, and they're going to negotiate a contract that looks like a straight up legal document. And as I said during the middle of the movie, I would have really been interested to see what the legal team had to say at Gray Industries about having to do this one for the boss.
Right.
But they sit down and in a whole scene, point by point, negotiate this contract.
Right. During which you raised the very excellent point about the fact that she knew what anal fisting was, but did not know what a butt plug was.
Right.
That's like being a varsity level athlete, but also not knowing what a ball is.
Right.
It's just kind of like, well, all right.
And they show that she knows how to Google.
Yes.
They show that she knows, she's given a computer to do specific research on everything. But somehow that's the question she brings to the table. Apparently, typing in butt plug was a bridge too far for Anastasia.
Yes, our delicate flower.
She didn't want that on her IP search. But anal fisting, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if that's really a reason to limit your searching, I really should just set fire to my computer right now. Like, just honestly.
But the movie ends, and this was the beef that I took away with, and I'm over it now. I've seen the movie twice now. I've talked through it. I'm not full of the same. At least from a film narrative point, she's furious with him at the end after she asks to have it the worst that she can get it. And to all evidence to the contrary, that is by far not the worst thing that he could do to her in that room. And that is too much. Like, she was not prepared for any of it. And I understand there's an emotional disconnect that the character is supposed to have between the logic, or at least the facts of what are supposed to happen. And it's, from a narrative standpoint, it's deeply unsatisfying. I
agree. Yeah, he hit her 6 times on her bottom with a belt. And that was the quote-unquote worst. Meanwhile, in that luxury shot that was establishing what the playroom / red room looked like, there were like canes in there. Canes like they use in Singapore to do corporal punishment for criminals, which break skin, cause tissue damage, can be really, really serious. They are in that shot. There are studded paddles. There are big, thick straps and quirts and whips and all kinds of things. And there's all kinds of restraints and stuff. So, I mean, she was bent over a surface and hit 6 times with a belt, and that was the worst.
Yeah. The stated purpose that I picked up a lot more in the second viewing this time was, well, why would you want to punish me when he has spent the prior 2 hours, it is a 2-hour and 5-minute movie, saying this is not about punishment. This isn't about inflicting pain. It's about giving pleasure back and forth, and just in these roles. And it seems like a weird betrayal of the entire setup of the prior 2 hours. But do you have any other hot topics that you want to cover before we wrap it up?
I think that one thing that we didn't really touch on too much yet that I think we should is that her parents are horrible.
Right.
Specifically her mother.
Yeah.
Good Lord. For anyone who hasn't seen this movie, I don't know why you're listening to this, but hey, one of the scenes has Christian Grey showing up on the other side of the country from where his business and residence are, after his prey has gone to seek counsel and comfort from her mother and her stepfather, or her 4th stepfather, or whatever. I don't know. It sounded like her mom had some commitment issues that we didn't really get into. So she's hanging out with her mom, and she's like, oh, I just don't know. This relationship's confusing. I don't know what to think, And then she gets a phone call, and it's Christian Grey. He's like, hey, I'm here. And he's literally there. He is in the place where she and her mother were having brunch or cocktails or whatever. He just walks up and sits down, and her mom's all aflutter about it, just like, oh, he's so handsome, and he orders gin and tonic drinks in a way that I find sexually appealing, and blah blah blah. And it's just like, lady, this man stalked your child across the country. There's no reason he should know exactly where you are.
Exactly. Not what town,
right,
where your butt is planted at a restaurant.
Yes. He knew where you were seated.
Yeah. He can see what you're drinking.
Yeah. And it's creepy. It's creepy. It's not sexy. It's not endearing. It's not cute. It means that he is putting to bear his considerable resources on tracking your child.
And the mom leaves.
And, yeah, and she's like, I'll let you two talk. And then she runs off. And it's like, it's such a failure as a parent and as someone who would want to protect their child or at least have some interest in their child's potential mate or date. I can tell you what, like my mom would have been all over him. Just like, what do you do? What are your parents like? Which, of course, would have opened up a whole kettle of fish, apparently, because his parents were... His birth mother was a prostitute, and then his mom was a doctor, and his dad was... I don't know what he does. I think they talk about it more in the next movie. But they're rich as hell, and, it's all... normal parents would inquire. Abnormal parents would be like, you two have fun and get drunk. I'm going to go now.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough to watch. Go ahead.
Maybe that's why they're both so terrible at talking to people, because they had really extremely pathological family environments.
Yeah. To kind of get back to the filmmaking of the movie, two things there. One, my heart just breaks because Marcia Gay Harden plays his mother, and since Miller's Crossing in 1989 or whatever that was, she's been great. And you're like, oh man, like I'm glad she's getting the paycheck. I'm glad she gets getting the wardrobe and all that. But woof, this is some thankless work at this point in her career.
Yeah.
But then it's also the getting back to, apparently they just did not want to stray at all from the book, which is what E.L. James, that's what she put down. And I don't know if it reflects much of Twilight or not. But otherwise, that would have been a script doctoring conversation of that never would have made it through a normal process. But apparently the process for this movie was we take the book, we take it scene by scene and turn those into scenes for the film, and nothing will be cut. It will all be there. Anyway, we got another movie to watch.
We do.
We got more wine to drink.
Thank God.
And we will return with more on 50 Shades Darker, the sequel in the middle chapter, not necessarily dark middle chapter, but our middle chapter of the romantic, erotic, something.
Epic.
Yeah.
Iconic. Superlative.
Oh, they're so good, y'all. Yeah. But we'll be back with more on 50 Shades. And we are back. We have just watched 50 Shades Darker, the sequel to 50 Shades of Grey. It's full of action, adventure, things that occur. No less than something like 5 marriage proposals over the course of a week to the same person over and over and over.
Christian Grey, always chasing those contracts, one way or another.
It's gonna seal the deal.
Yeah, gotta have that paperwork.
So this is the follow up to, and this is where the continuity of the movie is more or less fine from film to film, but the chronology of the movie and the time in which everything takes place, when you watch the two films back to back, seems to occur within, I don't know, everything seems like it's happened within like 6 weeks.
That is roughly what it seems like to me as well. Maybe as long as 3 months, but no more.
Yeah, at most 3 months.
Right. It has not been a long period of time that they've been in each other's acquaintance.
This is the film that begins to seem to de-escalate or seem to try to lessen, and I don't think this is intentional, but to lessen Christian Grey's stalkeriness by inserting no less than 3 new antagonists who are all essentially stalkers. We have, well, 4. I mean, I don't know. Let's count Jose. Poor Jose.
Right. Jose is kind of like the nice guy, capital N, capital G, nice guy in the series. So he's not exactly a stalker so much as a hanger-on.
Right. I felt sympathy for Jose the first time I watched 50 Shades of Grey and this movie, and this time I did not. This time watching it, I felt like Jose was not making the right calls in respect to Anastasia, partially because of the kiss in the first movie that he tried to force on her. And then in this movie, I do remember from the first time we saw it, the giant photos that were, those things were like 6 foot by 3 foot or something that he was trying to sell in his art show that he'd taken of Anastasia without her knowing, and then put them as part of his art show without her knowing.
Yep. Well, and I don't know, we may need to circle back to this at some point, but I feel like Jose is one of many people who has absolutely disregarded any opinion that Anna might have expressed about anything ever.
Right.
Her consent means nothing, and it's so interesting because she's such a frustrating character, because as you're watching, you're all like, you just told him that you didn't want to do XYZ and now you're doing XYZ, or you said you didn't want to do this but now you're having a croissant, and he obviously did the thing he wanted to do. And so you see this kind of happening over and over again, and I think that ties everything back into the whole Me Too moments, because with the awkward kiss with Jose, many of us have been there, and it's just like, you try to act normal the next time you see them because your friends like them and blah 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 blah, but that's just another time that she has learned it doesn't matter what she says. She can say whatever she wants, but people are going to do whatever they're going to do to her, and it literally does not matter what she says or how she feels about it.
Very specifically, at the gallery, Jose says to her, or she says, you didn't tell me you were going to do this. And he says, if I'd asked, you would have said no. And then he kind of laughs, and she just kind of gives the same blank expression she's given the entire prior movie. Yeah, it's I'm not exactly, I mean, who knows what E.L. James was thinking. I mean, clearly she wanted to more use the images as, oh, isn't she beautiful? It's supposed to be this Mary Jane moment, but it plays very, very strangely. The other characters we have, Anastasia gets a job at a publisher, and now she's working as an assistant to the fiction editor for a small publishing house in Seattle. That editor is played by Eric Johnson, who, to tie it back to the occasional theme of Superman on my blog, played by Whitney somebody or other, Ellsworth, I think, who... What?
Boardman.
I don't know. I think Jamie just said Whitney...
No, that was his character name.
Yeah. Jamie's yelling characters' names at me from the other room. He played the competition for Clark Kent for Lana Lang's affections in Smallville, and he's still playing the bad guy competition for someone's affections. Although she's trying to just have a professional relationship, this is where they go full blown, like, this is what a bad guy looks like. This is what a stalker looks like. You don't want this guy. Leading right up to the ending of the movie, and that's a professional workplace issue. Amy, I didn't know if you had anything to add about.
Well, when the creepy editor guy was at the crescendo of his creepiness, he had her pinned against the door, basically saying something to the effect of, if you want to fuck your way to the top, why don't you fuck someone that will make you smarter instead of someone that will make you richer? Which was an interesting dichotomy, because it's like that's what was presented as her two options. And how about she didn't fuck anybody? That could be a thing. Yeah. She could not have sex with anybody and be successful on her own merits, maybe. Or maybe not. Maybe she rises and falls on her merits. I don't know. But it was just strange that the only two options that were offered to her were sex with rich man or sex with more successful professional. And that was it. It's just kind of like, once again, what she might actually want to do or how she might actually feel about a situation, totally irrelevant. She was presented with two very curtailed choices, and she did pick one of them,
Right?
But still, that was how it was framed for her, and that wasn't necessarily the choice that she would have made for herself, or how she would have described the choice she made.
Right. So a lot of stuff happens in this movie because it's so episodic. It was very, very much written as I'm imagining as E.L. James is writing the fan fiction. She's like, and now I'm going to write a chapter in which this occurs, and so the business with her boss occurs somewhat compactly and very discreetly in packages, kind of throughout the movie. And so they tried to package the movie in kind of these discrete elements, and that definitely plays out throughout the movie. And so we are introduced at the very beginning of the movie to Kim Basinger's character, who we had heard alluded to but never saw in the first movie, who in theory turned Christian to this life of sin, and now it's been years supposedly since they've been together, but she still wants to maintain, I guess, some sort of passive, at least, control over Christian.
Yep. Yeah, and as a side note, it cracked me up a little bit when I noticed the name of her salon, because it's the Spanish word for slave, and it's just like, oh really?
And so yeah, it was not much occurs there within that. It just kind of happens. It gives somebody for Anastasia to overcome just through her power of just showing up, which is kind of what she does. And then the last character was one that not much happens. It's the most dramatic scene in the film. She appears a few times out of, on the street, and then she says Anastasia's name to her, and it turns out she's and she apparently breaks into Anastasia's apartment, which is apparently the most insecure place in Seattle, and watches Anastasia sleep with Christian. And trashes her new car and other activities, and then comes back into her apartment and pulls a gun on her. And at this point, we already know from the prior film, at age 27, I think it is, if 29 if I'm wrong, but he's not older than 29. Christian has had 15 different subs who've been in his power or thrall or whatever. And to me, the first time I saw this movie, it hit me a little bit less this time because I saw it coming. But there's some interesting Jedi mind tricks that clearly he has got going with this girl who's supposed to have had a nervous breakdown because of some tragedy. But it made me wonder, what happened to the other 14 girls? What was the pattern here? How broken were these people when he found them to begin with? How broken did he leave them? Did he hand off this woman to her husband, who then died, which is why she freaks out and decides she needs Christian back? But yeah, and Anastasia's big concern is, I'm never going to be able to do that for you, rather than, oh my God, what did you do to these people?
Right. Yeah, and that is an interesting point, because I'm trying to think of the timetable on that. And if let's say that he's 28, just to kind of split the difference between our possible ages, and we know that the older woman that he was with apparently was with him when he was very young, like maybe let's say 17. So we've got a little over a decade span of time. So that's like one every 8 or 9 months that he would just kind of rotate through if he started right after he left.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It does seem like a lot, or maybe there were some concurrent ones.
Sure.
We don't,
Yeah.
we don't know.
We don't know.
But yeah, it just seems kind of, or maybe there was a quick burn rate on a few of them, and like a couple of them were like, "Yeah, not for me, gotta go."
Yeah, which hats off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
indeed.
But yeah, it's the getting to the question of what is the narrative arc of all three movies, and I'd kind of said, well, I think it's about her making his sex life less interesting. I kind of wanted to walk that back a little bit because I'm not exactly sure that's entirely true. I think it's supposed to be this merging of, the way he had been with, her wanting to be vanilla and trying to find some kind of happy medium. Whether or not you want to apply real world rules or how people tend to actually be to this, I don't know. And we haven't seen the third movie. I don't know how things play out. I've just read the Wikipedia entry again. Did you have any additional thoughts on the kind of arc of things as it were?
Well, the arc is sort of hard to discern just because so many things happen and there's not necessarily clear indicators of time or pace. And, in some ways that's a Shakespearean mode of storytelling. It also, it hit me tonight when we were watching that this really reminds me of soap opera pacing, where it's just one thing after another and it's just like this string of happenings and things keep on occurring and occurring and occurring and occurring, but everybody still looks the same and nothing much changes. And also the plinking, piano songs in the back. Like Jamie was saying earlier that, while Danny Elfman does the music on this ostensibly, it does not have any of his usual taste or sounds or aesthetic or timing or anything. It's just he seems to have been working at kind of arm's length, like, I guess I'll make a soundtrack, give me that check, all right, cool. But even the background sounds are soap opera piano soundtrack sounds.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked to find out that Danny Elfman's intern was in fact the one who did this.
Right, and they had cut their teeth on like All My Children or something like that. I don't even know what soap operas are on anymore, but I just admitted something about myself. So but it's definitely it's hard to discern any development or any true arc because there's no way to tell what amount of time this is all taking place in, and it just seems like this avalanche of things that are happening.
Can we talk about the helicopter then? The helicopter crash.
Good Lord.
So, trying to figure out narratively what is supposed to be occurring or how this drives anything forward, I guess I can pull some threads together, but the point is Christian goes away to Portland to go conduct business as a businessman. Mm-hmm. And he is flying back with his sidekick, partner, whatever, I think her name was Rosa Ross, and the helicopter, as they're flying over Mount St. Helens, they make a big deal out of the fact they're flying over Mount St. Helens, at least in the extended cut. I can't remember the original cut. And the helicopter starts going down. And that's where it crashes, is somewhere in the forest around the feet of Mount St. Helens. And they find the rest of the crew, the POV we're following, finds out about it while they're having beer. And they run back to Christian's apartment where the Gray family has huddled, his parents and various siblings, and for some reason Jose. And they all are just hanging out there. It's weird.
Right, especially since the narrative function of having everybody together is served immediately after by Christian's birthday.
Right.
Like, immediately. There is literally no reason to have that gathering because nothing happens that's any different than what happens when you get everybody together with those, in reference with those particular characters. Nothing happens that's all that different at the Gray estate that wouldn't happen in his apartment. And even with Jose, who really the only reason that he has been anywhere at any point after the art gallery scene was literally just to say, oh, I guess Christian's all right after all.
Yeah,
He's giving
they're ending that whole conflict, if it ever
Right.
existed or anyone gave a second thought to it.
He's giving the nice guy stamp of approval to
Right.
to this person.
That Christian guy's all right by me.
Right. And that could have easily happened at a birthday party rather than at a gathering where people are freaked out about a helicopter crash. There was no purpose, no narrative weight, nothing at stake.
Right. So, after the helicopter crash and a half completed sex scene, they get to some point and they go back to the Red Room. It's the only time they go back to the Red Room in that movie is after the helicopter crash, which I found curious.
All right.
And then after that, she tells him I can't remember the order things occur in, but she then says, yes, I'll marry you. There are, I counted, I believe 6 individual instances of them agreeing to get married on screen in this movie. It just keeps happening. I think you can say his first proposal happens at night. They wake up, he's having night terrors, and then in the morning they have another conversation about it, and then it just keeps happening. He proposes to her again and again, and then he announces it in front of everybody. She calls her mom, and then at the very finale of the movie, the very final moments of the movie, he proposes again after, as we noted, telling everybody they were going to pick out a ring together. He does what?
He gives her a ring that he picked out himself. Because that's how Christian Grey does things. It's like, baby, you've got to say, ha 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 ha. Here's your rock. It was just really the most Christian Grey thing he could have possibly done.
And before we wrap it up on all this, I want to make sure I hit the fact that we talk about Later's baby. And you said that there's a bunch of stuff out there on Etsy that has Later's baby embroidered on it, printed on it.
Yep.
Okay, so to catch you up, if you haven't seen the movie, especially in the first movie, every time they part ways, Christian says Later's baby, which there's no origin for it.
His brother says it too.
Does he?
I think so. His gum smacking brother.
That's right. It was a bold character choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That character's origin story is he really likes gum.
But and I think we counted in the first movie. Did we say it was 6 times you saw her panties removed?
I thought it was higher than that.
Okay.
But we didn't really keep a hatch mark. But it seems like a fair statement to say that it was really important in the eyes of the director to constantly be taking off her panties in a rolling shot. Like, it was a big deal. It had to keep happening. Okay, fine, whatever.
In this movie, there were only 4 that I at least made hash marks for that you saw. Although there were actually, I think there was 5 now that I think about it. I think I didn't make a hash mark when she was in the restaurant.
We were drinking a lot of wine. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm on my 4.5 glass of wine. So
yeah, lots of wine.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been an interesting ride. We got to pick this up again in February.
Yeah, we're gonna go see it. We've seen all of them in the theater. We decided to do this rewatch just so it would be really fresh in our minds. Also, I think we might be masochists because who would do this?
This is about it for me. I think I'll be done with the 50 Shades of Grey saga by the time we finish recording the next one of these. Yes,
I'm okay with that. You have my consent to stop.
Thank you. I'm going to get a contract that says that.
Right.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much. And if you have any questions, comments, problems with us, send them in. We'd love to hear from you. And have a good one. That about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. I've been your host, Ryan Steens. Thanks for sticking with us. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So until next time, God damn it, babies. You've got to be kind.